Hey everybody, welcome to day 2 of my vlog. I am doing 30 days of vlogging just purely for a creative outlet and just seeing what happens, what comes up. And usually I am recording it at the end of the day, obviously to just share what happened today, any musings that I have. And one of the things that came up is like, well, actually, I did a lot of talking today, meaning I had a client coaching session, which was really amazing, and just really talking about setting boundaries and what does it look like in the workplace. And then I had another conversation with a dear friend of mine, possibly renting out her studio because I want to do more in person events. I know that there's just this energy and crave and desire for people wanting to meet in person and build community and all of that stuff. And then, I just connected with different people, did my consulting work. And so it's just like usually my day to day is just like very, very full of conversation. It's a hybrid of like doing walks. I work from home. I do consulting work, and something like I would say probably one of the highlights of my day was catching up with a friend of mine who lives in New York. And what's really interesting is I remember when I was in a relationship before and I just didn't believe in platonic relationships. I didn't believe that you could have a friend that was of the opposite sex because there was always some underlying, I don't know, agenda to sleep with you. And that just came from my own belief of having mistrust with the the people that my partner was friends with. And ultimately that I mean, like, at the end of the day, I just didn't trust him. And so having to ask myself that question of what are you doing with someone that you can't trust, right? And so I remember thinking like, okay, well, if I just cut off all his relationships with female friends, then maybe I won't have to worry about that, thinking that it was an outside issue when really was an inside issue. So thinking like, okay, if I won't feel insecure as long as he doesn't have any female friends, as long as he doesn't talk to a female. And I remember I was working with a mentor at the time, and she was like, "What are you gonna do? Lock him in a cage?" And like cut off his relationships. And that's ultimately like when you find yourself wanting to do that, or you find yourself um as that like your security tactic, you're in hot waters, and you need to like go to therapy or like do some inner work about that, because it's not about the person. Sure, like maybe they might do things to aggravate you, but at the end of the day, it's like, what is it in me that feels like I need to control another human being? And you should never control a human being. The fact that you even like want to, it's just like, no, 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 no. Red flag on you, red flag on like them for still being in a relationship with you. But anyways, and so I just find it so fascinating because I remember when I broke up with that specific partner, like this was like so long ago, that I was on a mission to think about like, okay, what is my relationship to the masculine in a sense of, I did not go. I was going to go in this direction of like getting deep. I feel like it can actually be a podcast episode, but I'm like turning off my brain on that. If I want to repurpose it, blah, 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 like whatever. That's like turning off the brain of a content creator. It's just like, ooh, content, content, content. Okay. Anyways, back to this. And I just, was on a mission to heal my relationship to the masculine of like, can I have platonic friendships? And I remember when I wasn't with that person anymore, I was like, okay, like let me know what that looks like. And so I started seeking out different types of relationships. I was able to have spiritual relationships, and no, this isn't like conscious community. You're going to have like sex with everybody. No, this was just like literally platonic, where you're having dinner and you're talking about your romantic relationships, your trauma, blah, blah, blah. Maybe it's like trauma bonding in a different way. I don't know. Is that like what we all do in conscious community, is just like trauma bond all the time? But anyways, it allowed me to realize like, oh, you can actually not be attracted to someone, but more attracted to the conversations that you have, the likability, the similarities, like all of those things. And so that really healed that part of me. And so I find myself, especially now as an entrepreneur, like I love having diversification of thought. Like if you're constantly in the room with the same type of entrepreneurs, the same type of industry, the same type of upbringing, like it's very homogenous. I like being in a very diverse community. I have very diverse friends. I have friends of different ages. Um, and I think it's so important to surround yourself with people with different opinions as well, in order to help you think out of the box and just be tolerant of other people and their mindsets. And so that is why, like, I not only love interacting and connecting with women who are in like the coaching space, who are solopreneurs, but I also really love talking to males that are in like deep tech as well, which is like surprising me. Like, what? I don't know. But I live in San Francisco, and so it's very much like those, people, like a lot of people here, especially if like you go to, same as LA. If you go to LA, you're going to find a lot of people in the entertainment industry. Here in the Bay Area, like you're just going to find a lot of people in tech. Sure, they have like a different type of function, whether it's design, product manager, project management, or an engineer. Like they all are in some form of tech in some way. Like it just touches almost every single fabric of our life here. And so when I found myself in this community, maybe like a year and a half ago, it was this like co-working, not even a co-working space. It was like considered a third space. And I met so many people who were, startup founders or who are creating something. They were like entrepreneurs. And so you just naturally surround yourself with people who are in tech, but are entrepreneurs and starting their business. And most of the coaches that I meet on are just from online. And I just remember thinking like, oh my gosh, like me and this person, we have a really good relationship because we really vibe on so many different things. And I think because of that, also, I think it's very, very possible to find people that you connect with who are of the opposite sex. Sure, some people will tell me like, no, I don't think so. It's like, if you think about the movie When Harry Met Sally, that's what built when Harry, his character, he was just like, no, I don't believe in that, because they ended up becoming friends. And then eventually they did sleep together. And so I would encourage you to question like your relationships, because I know sometimes, and I have done this in the past too, when I was really insecure, maybe I was in like my single phases, right? You would always kind of, and don't lie to yourself. We know you've all done this too. You all just kind of like keep someone around um on like the back burner. And I remember one of my girlfriends, she said this too. She's like, a pair and a spare, especially when you're dating. She's like, have two pairs of people that you like equally, but then if both don't fall through, then you have a spare that you like don't like as much, but they're still there. But we've all done that. And that was like my trajectory of like how I looked at relationships with the opposite sex. It was always, you know, maybe I'm like, I low key know that this person's attracted to me, so I'm going to keep them around for my self esteem. Or maybe it was like, this person will help me with, I don't know, like, I hate to put it in gender, like manly roles, like I don't know, carrying cat litter to my apartment, like stuff like that, stuff I didn't want to do. But anyways, it's just very interesting. I think, early on in my spiritual journey too, I was in, 12-step community, and you have a lot of mixed interactions with different people, meaning you are talking to different men and women. And so you're just naturally in the minds of like people that are sharing their deepest, darkest secrets. And you're like, oh, okay. It gives them more color. It's not just the facade that you see, right? There's actually like depth to people and getting to know them. And so I think over time you just naturally or I started to change my perspective. Again, maybe it's because I'm in partnership, but even then, like I love connecting with different people, even if like there doesn't have to be a romantic type of attraction to them at all. I mean, you can fight me on this, sure, create a video. I'd love to know your thoughts, whether you believe me or not. And I wonder if it does change with time, right? But who knows? Anyways, this is a short vlog. I think another thing I want to talk about too, and this is like a complete tangent, which is totally fine because it is just a vlog, is also knowing that when you're on the spiritual path. So I guess like the overarching theme of this is like relationships with the opposite sex, and then also just like relationships that you think you've outgrown. And so a lot of this happens all the time, and it's just something that we have to accept, right? Like naturally, whether it's like romantic relationships, whether it's friendships, whether it's jobs, um, family, right? Uh, you tend to evolve as a human being, and maybe what brought you two together initially isn't what is sustaining you, because both of you are just so different. And I just was having a conversation with my partner about one of my friends where I said, I think if I met this person, I don't know if I would be friends with them. And that always makes me sad, especially when it doesn't have to be like this big thing that you're announcing when you don't want to be friends with someone anymore, or like just acknowledge like, hey, we just have like different interests now, and that's totally fine, and it's part of life and it's normal. And I think the hardest part of when you are doing any type of inner work or whatever spiritual journey or interest is that you're pursuing, you just naturally tend to either like grow parallel with people or grow apart with people. And I hate to make it sound like it's black and white, but I think the black and white part about it is that you get to choose whether or not the the temperature of how much you want to be in that relationship, right? And so I remember someone once told me, it's like, oh, you have your tier one friends, your tier two, your tier three, right? Your tier one or like your number one, then you have tier two, it's like acquaintances or something, or like acquaintances of acquaintances. And so just really being mindful of, sometimes people might do things that you don't necessarily agree with, but it's important to have a tolerant perspective, because one, at the end of the day, it's like, okay, am I judging you? Am I projecting my ego on you of what I think is right or wrong, or, how you should live your life? But at the end of the day, it's like, okay, whatever you're interested in, if that's making you happy, then like go do you. Because the last thing I want is like anybody judging me for the things that I pursue, or like the trajectory or the path that I'm on, because they don't agree with it. It's like, if you don't agree with it, then don't hang out with me. And I'm totally fine with it. You find your people, I'll find my people. And I think that's why throughout my life, I've had so many different types of different friendships, different circles, just based on whatever evolution and season and cycle of my life that I've been in. I've had like, grade school friends, growing up friends. I've had high school friends. I've had college friends. I've had my New York friends. I've had my 12-step friends. I have my MBA friends. I have my old work friends. I have like my, spiritual girly friend. Like there's just so many different groups. And I feel like you just really can't pinpoint me or put me in a box. And God forbid someone says like, oh, you can only hang out with like the same group of friends. Like, and that's something that I personally dapple with. It's like, I know when I'm ready to move on, and it's like, that's why I always think like you will always be your best friend. You always have to be your best friend, because you take you wherever you go. Like you are with yourself, and you are the person that's experiencing all those different relationships with so many different people. Same with, romantic relationships as well. And so that is why it's, when you come to that realization, sometimes it can hurt, especially when you are really good friends with someone, or maybe it's a company where you're just like, oh, I just really don't like the direction and culture that it's going in. So I want to just opt out. And, and that's totally normal and that's fine too. Or even just romantic relationships where it's just like, we are not the same people. And I see this a lot happen when people are together in high school and then they break up in college. Like that's what I went through. Or maybe people are together when they're in college and then they, I don't know, get married or something. And it's just like, oh my God, we got married when we were like way too young before we even know ourselves. And that's why I think it's so important. Like, even though you feel like you know yourself at a certain age, like you will always surprise yourself all the time. We're constantly changing. And so instead of beating yourself up for not feeling like, or feeling like you have to let go of certain people or not be as close to people, it's like always try to have this tolerant perspective, or that's like what I try to do, even though sometimes I can be judgy. I'm always like, oh, all right, like I'm projecting, I'm thinking like it has to be a certain way. And the thing that you can do to feel empowered is, you get to choose how involved you want that person in your life, how you want to interact with them. There doesn't need to be like this whole drama thing about it. But that is something that came up to me that I was thinking about today. And so, anyways, that was my day. What else? I'm like trying to think, what else did I do today? But I've had a really nice day, worked on a couple of things. I'm going to announce it later, but I just wanted to share that. I also had this new thing of where I am creating, or no, I'm not creating, but I'm trying out new recipes on TikTok. And so I've never done the Super Bowl buffalo chicken dip. It's in the oven right now. It's about to go off. I'm excited. That was the timer that I needed to do my vlog and then do it. And I'm going to upload this YouTube video and all of that stuff. But anyways, thanks for tuning in to day 2. And tomorrow I will be back with day 3. All right. Talk to you later. Bye.